Classes in session.
And welcome to Unlearn 16 Classes in Session. Guys, I need to share something with you today. I'm going to get to the real topic in a second, but I need to say this. I think, possibly, maybe, I had a hot flash. Is that possible? I'm 47. Would I have a hot flash? I was doing nothing. Anna and I were trying to record a TikTok, and I started just sweating profusely. And I blamed the t-shirt that I had just bought from Urban Planet because I feel like that material sometimes just going to catch on fire and combust in general. And then when I got home and I took it off, I felt better. Could I be having a hot flash at 47? Guys, it's not for the faint of heart. Getting older is not for the faint of heart. And on that note, as a teacher, let me roll into what we're going to be talking about today, because I think it's very interesting and I think it's very much part and parcel of the way that the world changes and the way that we have to adapt and the way that teachers have to adapt. Listen, I've been teaching for 20 years. When I first started teaching, I guess the internet was a thing 20 years ago, but they had to be at a computer. Most kids didn't have a laptop. They might have had one, but for the most part, they needed to be at a desktop. I don't remember, was that still dial up? We sure as heck didn't have smartphones. I remember still taking class trips to teach them how to use the U of T library. Fast forward to today, guys. Come with me on this mind bending, neck churning adventure because now we have something called GPT. For the love of God, I can't even say it. They even make the acronyms. Oh, wow. You know what? As a teacher, sometimes you can't get words out. But they could have made it easier to say. I mean, it's going to be really easy to cheat. That's kind of the point of this particular program. So it's an AI program for those who have never heard of it. And I'm talking to you, parents, teachers, and I'm even talking to students right now, if they happen to be listening to me for the next half hour, 45 minutes. Because this is an interesting turn of events in the academic world, right? So here's how this AI thing works. You go to your computer, you go into this program, you type in what you need. So let's say I want an essay on the Civil War in the United States, and I want it to be an argumentative thesis paper on how the unconstitutionality of Lincoln and his actions during the Civil War. I know a lot of you are like, Joanna, what the hell are you talking about? Trust me, it's a real thing. So I can go to this, I can type in the question, I can tell the computer what side to take in the affirmative or in the negative, how they're going to argue it. I can tell my computer how long I need it to be, how many sources to cite. I can even give it an indicator of what grade I'm in and what grammar level I want it to put off so as to possibly not get caught way out of my grammar zone. Okay? Now, my friend's kid Charlie showed me how this worked, and we kind of sat there and played with it for a little while, and then he sent me, you know, the finished product. Couple things. The finished product was a little embarrassing, first and foremost. I don't understand if Chat GPT doesn't understand necessarily essay structure or what a teacher could want, but maybe you could fiddle with that a little bit. I found the analysis fairly boring and superficial. Having said that, could you hand in this paper and get a decent mark and move about your day? Absolutely, you could. So everybody's up in arms, wondering if this is the destruction of education, wondering why we need teachers anymore. If you can type this in and somehow get this kind of answer back, and students will never again have to learn anything. And when I hear people panic like this, all I can think is you haven't been a teacher for long. Listen, kids were cheating when I was in school. Kids are cheating as I'm a teacher. Kids will be cheating long after I've retired, which will be pretty much never. Because people find ways to get around the system. But here's the reality. Back in the day, you could get a friend to do your paper. You could pay somebody to do your paper. You get a smarter kid to do your paper. There were many, many ways. And once the internet sort of exploded, you could buy your paper. Now, some kids aren't going to spend that money. So there's this monetary limit to who's going to cheat. But the kids that aren't going to spend their money, it doesn't mean they can't do a different paper for a different kid and somehow exchange goods and services. Listen, they're relatively, ingenuous. Oh my God, ingenious. You know, I probably should put the holds on this whole podcast if I can't even say any sentence correctly. But nonetheless, it's been around forever. I've watched kids try to get around the system at every single turn. And a lot of people have been asking me, well, are you nervous? 'Cause I teach social sciences. Are you nervous? This is pretty much obliterating you as a teacher. This is obliterating you as an educator. It's taking away anything you need to do with these kids. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Number one, it's doing one version of an assignment that is, I guess, an independent study kind of thing. So if I sat in my class and as a teacher, the only level of assessment I give is handing out one essay, and then the kid can figure out how to cheat, well, who's the bigger idiot here? I'm going to go with me. As an educator, especially in high school, you understand that there's a multitude of ways we should educate. There should be a multitude levels of assessment, a different, diverse sense of interconnectivity in both written and auditory and test and all of these different forms of the way we can get at, has the kid learn the information? Can they use it? Can they analyze it? Can they apply it? That doesn't just happen in one essay. Also, as a teacher, you understand that everything's not going to be this take home project, right? I need to see how my kids, how my students do in the classroom when we're talking about the material. If they can't pivot to a question, if they've handed in this perfect piece and then we all sit down to discuss the analysis of their essay and other students sort of start raising questions and they have no idea, the inconsistencies become apparent. Also, as an educator, you have to understand that some kids can write great essays, some kids can't. That doesn't mean that kid A is great and kid B is not. It doesn't mean the opposite. It just means there are different ways to evaluate each student. And if you're an intelligent educator, as most incredible educators are, you understand the variety just isn't to get at their potential. The variety is to test a bunch of different skill sets so that student becomes aware and becomes prepared for different sets of circumstances that they'll meet in the future, whether that is a test, a presentation, a debate, leading a seminar, or writing, and my kids sometimes hate this word, an in-class essay. You want to take the myth, or you want to take the trial away from whether or not a kid's going to cheat on your essay? Great, have an in-class paper due. Have them sit down with their notes in front of them, which is completely acceptable. Have them work through their thought. Keep that on file to every other essay they're going to submit. The way students write is very, very similar. Their grammar, their syntax, the things they're going to draw on is very similar. I am not saying that a student couldn't make a take-home essay better because they have more time and they have more skill and they have the greater ability to reread it and then submit it again. I am saying you'll see consistencies. So, given all that information, can students cheat? Sure. This isn't making it necessarily any more prevalent. It's just making it a little bit more easy for them to access because everybody can go onto this. Everybody can type it into the margins and be done with it. They're also going to have to be really carefully aware of if they all start doing it, because it does spread like wildfire, how similar are papers going to be if you enter in similar questions. Then kids are going to have to, what? Get together and compare? Figure out which sections you can use and I can use and Pete over there can use. Because if you all hand in the same paper or very similar paper, you're kind of you're kind of in the same position of plagiarism you were in before. So I like to look at it, and I'll talk about this particular piece of AI with my students because I don't think ignoring it is the best solution, but to talk about it maybe as a research tool, maybe as a citation tool. Listen, I used to belong to the kind of generation that thought you needed to go to the library to do real research. Those days are long gone. So, since those days are long gone and we're in this amazing, incredibly powerful, and ever changing world of the internet and what we can gain access to and how much more information we have, you have to adjust with all of the different things they can access that have good and negative consequence, powerful and destructive consequence. So, I'm definitely going to talk about it, right? But I am also going to make it very clear that my job as a teacher isn't to get them past my class, isn't to get them the 80 and move on with your day. A lot of people talk about how we can judge teachers. How do we know what the good teacher is and what the mediocre teacher is and the poor teacher? And there's lots of conjecture about that out in the public. Let me be very clear. The only way you can really judge what a teacher's done is if you get the kid, the student, for me, I teach high school. So if I teach a kid through grade 10, 11, and 12, and they go off to university, which is their goal, my test comes when they sit in the politics classroom of first year, when they do a seminar presentation of third year, when they're writing that paper and that dissertation in their master's level. And I realize it's all cumulative, but that's what I've tried to prepare them for. When a student comes back to me and says, Joanna, your notes for Politics 12 were awesome for first year university, I've done my job. When they tell me that I explained it in a good way, when they tell me that I gave them strategies and tips and methodology in order to better their writing skills, better their presentation skills, then that's, even better their test taking skills, then I've done my job. That's how you judge a teacher. How they, not what mark they got, that doesn't make any sense. Not how much the kid even likes you, to be honest. And I do like to be liked, but that's not a judgment of my teaching style. I get judged, and there's not necessarily the greatest of evidence or tracking system involved in this, but I get judged on the basis of how those kids did when they moved on to the next level. And I have to acknowledge this program. I have to acknowledge this program for its benefit, but I also have to acknowledge this program for the landmine they might step into. Because as anybody knows, if you've been in the social science in university, very quickly, two things happen. Number one, you steer away from just major exams at the end of the semester. That's not how they test you anymore. You'll do that first, maybe second year university, and then they steer away from it. Why? I'll tell you why. Because it's not a great way of assessing intelligence or capacity. But it is a great way of handling, especially those like Scantron cards. It's a great way of handling and assessing large groups of students and then dividing them out, who's going to make it through and who's not going to make it through. I don't personally think the test is the best form of analysis, but it is quick and easy, right? And it gets the job done in a classroom, let's say, that could have 500-600 kids in it come first year university. So when kids say, Joanna, we don't like tests, why are you making us do a test? Well, the answer is very simple, because I have to teach you how to take a test. I have to teach you how to absorb and organize and memorize large amounts of information. I have to help you minimize your anxiety and minimize your levels of stress and maximize your ability to manage your time and manage your intellect and even your energy in order to tackle that particular task. So I have to do it. Do I think it's the best? No. But I know first and second year university, you're going to hit it. After that happens, those social sciences, what happens is You then are, as soon as you get great at a test, this is what I found, because I wasn't great at a test in high school. I got really good at university. And as soon as I got really good, want to know what happened? They stopped giving me tests because the class size is reduced. And by the time you hit third and fourth year in university and then progress on to your master's or PhD, they're not interested in making you memorize stuff anymore. That's not the goal because that's a very low academic bar. They're interested in two things. Can you understand and analyze and apply? And here's the real kicker. Can you do it on your feet? Can you do it in the moment? Can you do it where there is no net and you're not able to double check with a friend and send a paper over here or pull something off ChatGPT? Can you do it in that room full of students where the professor's asking you questions, where that pain in the butt student it keeps asking you questions just so they seem extra smart, right? Where they're trying to trip you up. How well do you do it then? And if up until that point you've forgone actually doing your own papers, you've avoided figuring out how to analyze, figuring out how to criticize, you've sidestepped all of that. And by the way, you didn't need Chat GPT to do that. You just needed a little bit of money and a smart kid in class willing to do papers for free, and nobody could catch you doing that. Or you buy them off the internet that's on a locked site. Like there's so many ways to cheat, right? And lots of people say, oh, cheating never works, blah, blah, blah. Here's why this kind of cheating never works. In education, there will become a time where if you can't do it on your feet, if you can't do it in the room, everybody's going to see you for what you are, which is a fraud. So you're not going to excel in those upper years. You're not going to get the job. You're not going to be great at the job because all of the skills that you've sidestepped in order just to get good marks and get through and do it quick and easy are now going to come crumbling down upon you. And you won't be able to prove yourself because you haven't forced the skill set upon you. Now, can we use this amazing form of AI to help the learning process? Absolutely, we can. Can it help understand? And I mean, I haven't seen it work like this, but can it help raise up different critical questions? Absolutely. Want to know how I'd use it? Here's how I'd use it. I would want it to create, like, let's say we're talking about an argumentative paper, and this is the intelligent way to use this kind of AI to actually utilize technology we have to better your understanding, your analysis, and your output. If I was writing a paper, let's say, and my paper was, let's make it easy, Jaws, the best movie ever made. First of all, I think that might be an objective fact. But if I wrote that paper and I cited, special effects and music and character development and all those things, and I pulled things from the movie and analysis from critics and analysis from theater and box office results and all of those things, and I built this amazing mountain of an argument. Want to know what Chat GPT should be used for? The opposite paper. Have that computer, that AI, challenge you, because we don't all have people around us that can challenge our ideas, that can say or that can frame the exact same level of critique, but in opposition to your ideas. The best way for any of us to learn, myself included, is by sitting across the room from somebody who is equally passionate and driven to disprove everything you've researched and you've said, and then to listen to what they have to say, not necessarily to change your mind, but to make your original argument stronger. Now, normally this works by having a friend sit there, right? Batting ideas back and forth, or having a colleague sit there and batting ideas back and forth. We all get smarter the more people in the room. But minus that, this kind of AI and this kind of research capacity could really raise those questions quickly. So if I then ask the computer to make me an essay citing why Jaws was a complete disaster, I raise that essay. I listen to those statistics. I then go and cite their sources. I go find where they source their material from. Are they valid sources? Are they reliable? Are they credible? Because that's important, obviously. P.S. There should be a whole course in high school about that. There isn't. And then take it back to my paper and see which things I should tackle within my argumentative essay, not just to prove my point, but to slyly, to covertly, to subtly disprove anybody's opposition to the points that I've already raised. That is a great paper. The first or the former is a decent paper. The latter would be a great paper. And if anybody thinks that that interaction and that use of AI is not making students and academics better, well, you're being ridiculous. You're just being nervous about and trepidatious about the negative impacts that this kind of access to information would have, but you're not taking in the full picture. It's still doing what we want it to do, which is allow a funnel, a wave, a community of intellectual powerhouses to be channeled through this amazing thing called the computer so I can sit and have deep, important, powerful thoughts and analysis and critique about all of the pieces that I've learned. Isn't that education? Why would I, as an educator, be afraid of that? As an educator, why wouldn't I embrace all of the amazing things that could bring? When I was a kid and we were sent to the library to go do a paper on whatever in politics, right? Unless we were given resources, I'd go find, I don't know, 10 books. In my first and second year, my third year even, was I doing that intelligently? No. Did I make friends with the librarian? Yes. Yes, I did. Did she help me try to find the best books? Yes. They always talked about journal articles, so you try to master that and as a new piece of information. But guys, when we were kids, we had the U of T library. And I don't know if anybody's from Toronto or knows what the U of T library, but it is I should take a video down there because it's just this epic place. It really truly is an epic place. But now kids have the, the world at their fingertips. They can get a perspective of a PhD student working, through the University of New Delhi on the similar project that they're working on in Manitoba, focused on customs and government structures in Tanzania. Guys, that's the world we live in. And sometimes we forget. We think that the kids are always looking for an easy way, and sure, some of them are. Some of us are. But we also forget at the onslaught of information that they're facing, the wave of information they're facing, and how they're supposed to discern and whittle it down and decide what has value and what doesn't have value and what they're going to focus on and how they're going to critique it or how they're going to catalog it. That's incredibly hard, and it's getting harder. It's getting harder as there's more and more educated people in this world. When you think about it, guys, women weren't even allowed to go to university in a significant way until when? Mid 1950s? We didn't even allow 50% of the population to go to universities to produce, or colleges, to produce credible academic material and distribute it across the world. And that's not even taking the rise in world population. And that's not even taking into account the rise in all of these developing countries outputting amazing academic material from all over the world. Or back in the day, it was coming from a very specific and localized or targeted community. When I was a kid and we took history class, we had a book. That was it. That history book. That was your go-to. You didn't even know if it was right or wrong. I think about my history book when I was in high school. Forget when I was in high school. My first 10 years of teaching, the government sort of subsidized or utilized curriculum-based History 10 textbook for Canadian history didn't even speak in a significant way about residential schools. Didn't even. If I didn't have real world experience and connections to those communities, I never would have known. I would have had no idea. So we now live in a world where I say something and a kid within 37 seconds can fact check me. And they do. You think they don't? Oh, look, they're dying to catch me. They're dying to catch their teacher saying something wrong. And I love it. I love it. Sometimes I'll say to my students, listen, I'm going to say one wrong thing in this class. Whoever catches it, I'm going to sort of start a competition, wins, a bonus mark or wins whatever. They don't care as long as they win. I could put a gold star on their hat and they'd be happy with me. But that's the power they have. And so when it's really interesting, when people think somehow that education and teaching and education doctrine is becoming or has become somehow some level of indoctrination or narrowing a viewpoint, they have no idea what they're talking about. They have none. They have no idea, A, of the curriculum, the expansive nature of the curriculum. And they also have no idea, no real comprehension of how much kids today can access, which communities they want to reach, which pieces of information they want to find, which statistics they're going to pull from where and why. It has opened up an academic world that is never ending. And this new chat program is just an example of that. Could it do some work for some kids? Sure it could. Sure it could. But again, we've always been there. Do I think when I sit and I teach kids about history and society and world religions and those things, these kids are more aware and more worldly and more in touch with everything than I ever was. Well, how do we get news when we were kids? You watched the 6 o'clock news, you read the newspaper. That's it. Forget about the bias in those media feeds. I always say this, think about what they didn't include. I'm always very interested in what was omitted. And the thing about the internet that is so incredibly powerful is nothing has to be omitted if you're willing to look it up, if you're willing to put in the time. So the goal of education never should have been, please write this research paper on World War II. Make sure you document your sources and come up, look, if that's how we're teaching, we were never teaching in the first place. If we were teaching kids to memorize dates and names and theoretical models, we were never teaching in the first place. But if we're doing what we actually have been doing, which is getting them to critically analyze, getting them to debate about it, getting them passionate about the material so they can understand it in a way that they can help shape their understanding and apply it to their world or apply it to the world around them, then guess what? You've got them. You don't have to worry about ChatGPT because those individuals, those students are empowered and passionate to learn, to apply, and to get better with that information, not just to get an 87. And I think when people talk about education going back to something, I'm like, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what you're talking about. Because when I was a kid, it was about the grade. And I had teachers say, Joanna, worry about the process. But you didn't have to back then. Because if you worked really hard, you could kind of like just memorize what you needed to memorize and get by the way you needed to get by rather than understanding, right? Now, having said all of that, this program being utilized in a scientific or a mathematic capacity, different. Of course, it's going to be applied differently. But again, all of the skills you think they can go home and do as a teacher, especially in high school, you better make sure they can do them in front of you. You better make sure they can do them in front of you without that extra help, because then it is not their learning process you are judging. Just like 10 years ago, it wasn't their learning process I was judging when I knew beyond the shadow of a doubt that their sister wrote that last paper for them. Because when they got up to do the presentation, they didn't even know the words that were in the paper, right? Or they didn't have the skill set. A lot of other people would say, well, if that happens, just fail them. No, I'm not a big fan of that either. Now, here's the reality. I'm a big fan of making them do more work. Because if you haven't gotten it then, my job is to work you until you get it. That's it. And this ChatGPT is just another step in an evolution of an access point to the epic world of information this world has to offer. It is the next plateau. It doesn't make our kids less intelligent. It doesn't make our kids like giving them less access to information. It gives them more. It gives them more power, more flexibility, more worldly understanding and awareness that is going to make them better humans, more intelligent, more capable in the world for future generations. That's what it does. And as soon as it does that, we're all in a better spot. What we need to do, and here's where some people are going to disagree, we need to build an education model that mirrors that. What does that mean? Well, it means that we need to start changing the sit down, be quiet, and write that essay. Or sit down, be quiet, and memorize this list. Because that structure no longer fits this reality. That structure and that template is no longer best serving the student of today, the knowledge they can access today, and the vast amounts of critical information they need to figure out how to process in order to get some end result. We have to change. And to do that, we need to understand more time in the classroom. A wider, in my opinion, a wider variety of classes should be expected for kids to be able to take and master. And at the very least, just take and understand the fundamentals of. And I think in that way, you're going to start seeing this amazing push, not just of, well, my kid's going to go to college or university and become a billionaire, but this amazing push that a 12-year-old can sit around the dinner table and talk intelligently about the crisis going on in Ukraine right now. Or a kid, 15 years old can sit on a trip to Florida with their parents and talk about how economic ideologies are changing in Latin America. You think teenagers can't do that? I'm telling you they can. And I'm telling you right now, they have access to that information. So we need to figure out a way to open the conduit, let them tap into it, and then redirect how we're going to structure a course in order to grow their critical skills, in order to grow their intelligence, and grow their passion for learning more. It's never been about how much can you memorize, or it never should have been about that. It always should have been about, how do I get them, people in general, not just students, how do I get them to care about information? How do I get them to care about the world around them, how they have impacted, how it impacts them, how all of those moving parts are necessary for us to progress and make the world a better place? That's where the magic lies. And ChatGPT might let some kids skate by as long as they can without doing any real work, and one day it all comes crashing. Or it's going to open up new doors, new access points for kids everywhere, no matter where they live, no matter who they are, no matter what language they speak, in order to maximize their potential, maximize their reach, and maximize the impact they're going to have on this world. In closing, ChatGPT, bring it on. I'm good. I think I can handle it as a teacher. I think my classroom can handle it. And I know my highly intelligent students are going to be better for the access than closing ideology and closing ideas and limiting the information they can get in my classroom. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me this week. I will see you next Tuesday. Same bat time, same bat station. Have a great week, guys. Dismissed.